The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to Reproaction's Act and Learn webinar for July 2022. We're very sorry that we have to have this conversation, but it is urgent and we are so glad that you've joined us. We're going to talk about holding big tech accountable for suppressing abortion, and it is happening and it is widespread and it is something that is extremely concerning. So first we'll introduce our hosts. First, voice you're hearing is Erin Matson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm co-founder and executive director of Reproaction. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I am on Twitter at Erin to the max. And I'll pass it to Jessica to introduce herself.
Thanks so much, Erin. My name is Jessica Ensley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Digital Outreach and Opposition Research Director at Reproaction, and I'm based in Washington, D.C., and excited to that everyone can join us today.
Excellent. Thank you, Jessica. So a bit about our agenda. We will introduce Reproaction, then we'll talk about suppression of Reproaction content. One of my favorite musicals is The Music Man, and there's a song in that called We've Got Trouble in River City, and we absolutely have trouble in River City as an organization that has been sharing fact-based information about abortion and holding abortion opponents accountable. We are sick and tired of the social media companies suppressing our content. We'll talk about big tech's response to abortion information post-Roe, and spoiler alert, it has been very disappointing and concerning and requires immediate action to be addressed. And then we're very excited about our panel discussion today. We have Martha Dimitritou from Women on Web, and Martha works in a variety of settings and may also bring on other experience that she brings in to the field, as well as Sonia from Women First Digital. And we had scheduled to have Rachel Lorenzo from Indigenous Women Rising, and we really hope Rachel will be able to join us, but it appears something may have come up. If not, we will just have a conversation with Martha and Sonia. If Rachel is able to join, we will bring her in later. And then we'll go through next steps and move to Q&A. A couple things. Number one, if you have questions, just put them into the questions tab at any time during the presentation. You don't have to wait until Q&A at the end. We will get to as many as possible at the end. So if you have questions, put them in right away. And if you like to live tweet this sort of thing, you're certainly encouraged and welcome to do so. Our hashtag is Reproaction. And just a bit about our organization. Reproaction leads bold action to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. We're extremely proud of our left flank analysis. We're known for our willingness to hold folks on all sides of the issues we work on accountable, whether they're traditionally considered allies or opposition. And we have a deep commitment to nonviolent direct action as one of the tools in our toolbox. The last thing that I will just say before passing it over to my esteemed colleague, Jessica, is I want to note that Reproaction has been engaged in a campaign about self-managed abortion with pills for many, many years, well before the changes in the current Supreme Court and well before the overturn of Roe. And I want to say very clearly, without any hesitation, that we embrace self-managed abortion with pills. We believe everyone deserves quality information about how their body works. And we do not see self-managed abortion as merely a last resort or a method of desperation in response to anti-human rights laws that have been suppressing people in this country. So just be very clear that we've been in that space a long time, and that is a major part of the lens we bring to big tech suppressing legitimate abortion information. So with that, I'm pleased to pass it to my colleague, Jessica.
Thank you very much, Erin. So first off, we're going to go over the Facebook suppression of Reproaction's content. So in September of 2021, we posted a series of graphics depicting the World Health Organization's protocol for self-managed abortion with pills. And you can see the below graphic here, which explains two ways to self-manage abortion with pills, one with mifepristone and misoprostol, and one with simply misoprostol. Can you go to the next slide, Erin? Thank you. Then in October of 2021, without receiving any type of notification from Facebook, I was looking on the back end of our site and noticed that the post had been removed for violating community standards. We had no recourse to review the post itself, only our page as a whole. Next slide, please. So in our campaign highlighting this incident, we outlined that Meta, which owns both Facebook and Instagram, that on Instagram, Meta had been suppressing the hashtags mifepristone and misoprostol as well. And as mentioned in the previous slide, those are pills used for medication abortion and for self-managed abortion as well. You can see we have screenshots here of both the hashtags being hidden on Instagram. So only after we published our action page and petition outlining all of these issues that we have with Meta did our original post about self-managed abortion with pills get reinstated. We received no notification or message on Facebook or from Facebook acknowledging any type of wrongdoing on their end or any type of explanation. And then earlier this year, we went to Facebook's DC office with our petition in hand. The receptionist informed us that no one from Facebook would come down to meet with us. We then sent in the petition via mail to both the headquarters of Meta in California as well as their DC office, and we have gotten no direct response from that. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Alrighty, now I'll go over Twitter suppression of Reproaction content. So in February of 2022, this year, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia had encouraged violence against trans people, and we called out her transphobia in a tweet thread. However, the following tweet was hidden and, quote, unavailable with no notice to our account. So you're starting to see a theme of we aren't getting these notifications. We have to do some digging in order to find this. So the tweet that was marked as unavailable was, we ask at House GOP and at House Democrats to consider if at Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's talk of violence against trans people, quote, reflects credibility on the House, end quote, as is required by your own code of conduct. And then we linked to the House code of conduct. So that was very frustrating. Again, there was no notification from our point, the Reproaction Twitter point of view, that the tweet wasn't being able to view it. It was only when other accounts would then look at our thread was this listed as unavailable. So we tried to contact Twitter and even test to see if there was a phrase that had like automatically flagged it. So we tweeted out another call to action using the phrase violence against trans people, but that one wasn't flagged and we didn't have any luck in contacting Twitter. Only after we then made a separate tweet thread with a photo of the suppressed tweet and then a blog post calling all of this out was the post then similar to Facebook, just sort of reinstated quietly with no acknowledgement from Twitter of any type of wrongdoing or explanation as to why that decision was made in the first place. Can you go to the next slide, please? Alrighty, now we're going to go over big tech response to abortion information post-Roe. So after the Supreme Court Dobbs decision, for several days on Instagram, content with the word abortion was being hidden from view and marked as, quote, sensitive content. So you would have to then you'd have to be over 18 years old, I believe, and then also click to click approval in order to view those posts. And it was everywhere. And it took outcry from the movement as a whole in order to fix it. And Meta claimed that it was a bug. And in the next slide, we have some examples of that. So as you can see, there are two posts on the left. The first one is what it would initially look like. It is blurred out and marked as sensitive content. And then if you clicked approval, you would see that this was actually an Instagram post by the Washington Post, just talking about a story The headline is Judge Temporarily Blocks Trigger Law on Abortion in Louisiana. And then you can see on the final far right post that The Sweet Feminist, which is a lovely pro-abortion cake Instagram, simply had a cake with the term pro-abortion on it, and a lot of it was being hidden. This was happening both in posts themselves, so when you're looking through the feed, and then on Reels as well. It was incredibly frustrating, especially in a post-Roe era that we are now in, as information on abortion is needed now more than ever. Is there another slide on this, or are we going to panelists now? Oh, yes. All right. I will kick it back to you, Erin. Erin, are you muted?
Sorry about that. My cursor got away from me and I was struggling to unmute. So thank you so much, Jessica. An extremely disturbing presentation that just scrapes the tip of the iceberg of what has been happening across the field. And I'm very excited to introduce Martha Dimitriou, who is a digital and media strategist working internationally in the nonprofit sector and sexual and reproductive health with organizations, including Women on Web, Plan C, Hesperian Health Guides, and the National Women's Health Network. Martha uses she, her pronouns and is active in the digital rights movement. And Martha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, this is a very important discussion, and I mean, it's not good at all that it's happening, but it's a little bit of a relief that, you know, people and organizations like Reproaction are starting to talk about it, because it's happening a lot. It's systematic. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Martha. And I just want everyone on this call to know what a fierce fighter Martha is and how instrumental she has been in bringing forward various sorts of cross-sector accountability. So she'll tell you all about it. Let's dive right in, shall we? So first question for you, Martha, is what type of abortion content have you seen suppressed, and on which platforms is it happening?
Yeah, so I'll speak a little bit about, so through Women on Web, I mean, as you know, Women on Web provides abortion access in many different countries, and therefore we have different Facebook and Instagram pages, and, you know, catering to different audiences. So we see suppression happening on Facebook, Instagram, as much as on Google, a lot and all the time. And I see it all the time, and I'll just start by something that happened yesterday. Our Women on Web Facebook Arabic page was taken down, and I appealed this, and they said that we are misleading our audience. I believe that it happened because 3 months ago we created a post that says abortion is a private matter. And yeah, it triggered something. That is what I believe, and now the page has been taken down, and we're appealing it, and this is just a little case of what's happening all the time. So you know, our main Women on Web Facebook page has been shut down by Facebook Meta a few times, and we had to appeal it. Our Ecuador page was being taken down, also our Mexico. You know, we have a constant warning on our page that says that your account is restricted, and it's been like this for 2 years now. And when I discuss this with Facebook, they say, oh, don't worry, it's just gonna go away. But in the meantime, yes, you're at higher risk to lose you know, all your accounts, and there's nothing we can do about this. And this is just in terms of organic. You know, then we have posts that are taken down. For example, I had on Instagram a post that was saying you can now order abortion pills before you're pregnant. That was about a post for advanced provision. It was an organic post, meaning, you know, it wasn't an ad or anything. It was organically, as you know, put up, and they flagged it for violating community standards. And it was taken down. So this is just an example of it. And it happens really a lot, and it's very, it's just exhausting to deal with Meta in a, you know, regular basis for these issues. And then our ads, we are verified to run ads, for example, in Canada. And I would, for example, try to run an ad saying, we offer online consultations, or, there was one ad that says our trained help desk is guided by doctors and provides confidential support. And this ad was just taken down and said that we're misleading our audience. And it's not only the actual ad itself, it's also even if we try to cater and change the content and do whatever Meta wants for it to fit, it's also that the end destination, meaning our website, is what they call sensitive content. So it doesn't really matter what we do with our actual ads from the Meta platform when we try to run it, because we say learn more and we're trying to direct people to our website, there are higher chances that it's just not going to run. So yeah, and then it happens on Google as well. All our ads are running with a limited reach. It's very difficult to get our content out, and it's really hard to try to communicate with someone from Google. It's they would often say, oh, don't worry, just do this and this, and it doesn't really change anything. And then there's also Google core updates, which are these updates that Google does because they believe that there is some content that is more trustworthy than others, and then all of a sudden you can just your page would just be downgraded. When you research say abortion pills, all of a sudden you might not see our website Women on Web anymore, and this has hurt us a lot. We're very vulnerable to these updates, and we don't really get any kind of heads up that this will happen. Back in 2020, we lost something like 80% of our traffic because of this. I think 40% of our consultations, and it can happen anytime. So yeah, this is just a little, and yeah, it's nothing really changes when we try to appeal. At some point, policy is gonna try, the Meta policy, for example, is gonna quote unquote take over the case, and then at some point they would say, oh, we will review your request of appeal, and then they would just say, oh, there is nothing we can do, and that's just how it is. And this is actually what seems like is happening right now with our big page. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Martha. There's a couple things that I want to just lift up. First, just echo you on it's exhausting to deal with Facebook. It's got 100% co-sign. I'm just remembering Jessica and I standing outside of their DC office attempting to deliver a petition, actually literally Facebook living it. They didn't suppress that post. We got lucky in that one. When we were denied entrance to drop off the petitions, it's just an ongoing struggle. And one thing, I want to lift up our colleagues at the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which are doing incredible work on online disinformation and social media platforms' failure to address it, which is another big problem for access. And one of the most important takeaways I had from that conference, it was actually from Jessica at the head of Free Press, talking about how what these big tech companies most want to do is have individual conversations with each organization or each advocacy sector by itself, rather than being dealt with collectively. And so it's really important and powerful that we're here. And then just the last thing, if I can open for a second, is I really want to underscore what's happening here in the United States now that Roe has fallen. And even prior to that, Roe fell effectively for many people a long time ago. But we're now in a situation where our ability to exercise our human right to bodily autonomy is increasingly not just one that is being fought on the grounds of the law, but it's being fought in terms of access to information. And big tech has an enormous responsibility in terms of its commitment to sharing quality fact-based information. And it's just completely blowing it. And I've got to say, even just from a conversation that Jessica Ensley on our team and I had with Facebook last week, it seems like they're still not getting it in terms of the tremendous responsibility that is now on their shoulders, and that times have really changed and they've got to own up. I want to ask you, Martha, specifically about Women on Web, just an amazing organization providing safe, accessible, and affordable abortion care to people around the world online. And if you could talk about the type of impact that the suppression of abortion-related information has in the organization. You've already talked about it with web traffic dropping because of Google and how catastrophic that is. One question that I think a lot of our listeners may be coming from a US-centric place, like what is the impact globally, and how should we be thinking about this globally when there are different responses that are happening to abortion information, depending on what country the information is being served up in?
Well, when for the example with Google is a good one, when they just demote our content, because then you see websites, for example, in Poland, when you Google say you use a Polish VPN and you Google abortion pills, the first result that comes up is actually a fake clinic. So it's really important that these tech companies take accountability, because it can really harm people. If I were to look for abortion access and I run into a fake clinic, for example, it can be really, really catastrophic, and so I really believe that it's really important that they understand that a lot of people get their information through them right now, and also the fact that people cannot access information that are accurate about vital health care, abortion care, can really affect you. I think it really makes you feel like you're doing something wrong when you try to look for abortion access, and it's something that is hidden, or that you have to go through all these loopholes to find it. It could give the impression that this is not okay, but it is, and it creates all this kind of like stigma, which I think is horrible. So I think that these platforms have to understand the impact that they have. If I'm looking for abortion, if I'm trying to reach out to, for example, women in Egypt, and I cannot let them know that, hey, this service is available, then this is and we know that we're a very important source of information for them. This is one less trustworthy source that they have access to. Our Arabic page was reaching thousands of people that now all of a sudden don't have access to this information. So yeah, I think that we have to really understand that every single time that one page is being taken down, or that a post is being taken down, it can really affect how people are accessing this information, and people who are in need. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So so in 2 minutes, we want to flip over to Sonia with Women First Digital and Jessica. But before then, are there any concluding thoughts you'd like to offer for now on social media company responses to being called out on suppressing legitimate abortion content? And also want to encourage folks, feel free to put in any questions for Martha in the chat, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end.
I'd say that again. I mean, they have to. We know that they have the power and the capacity to really look at this issue. At what's going on in terms of abortion access, and the way that we share accurate information on abortion, and how we try to fight disinformation. So I really think that they have to consider this a priority. We know that when they want, they can. So there is no reason for them to just not address this with the importance that it should have as an issue. Yeah, and practically, we know that we're trying to come together and trying to systematically bring this issue together with, for example, the RiceCon meeting that we had, where we try to come up to the big tech and say, hey, you have to be more transparent in the way that, first of all, you take down information in the models that you use to, rank how accurate information is, in the way that you consider telemedicine now, like what are the criteria of telemedicine? What does abortion access and the abortion landscape look like in the 21st century? And yeah, there has to be a more responsible approach from them, I would say.
Here, here. Well, I'm very pleased to pass it over to Jessica, who's going to introduce Sonia. Thank you so much, Martha. Any questions for Martha, put them in the questions tab. That has been spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now I would like to welcome Sonia Naik, who is the Senior Partnerships Manager at Women First Digital, an e-health social enterprise that deploys digital solutions to facilitate a broader shift towards user-controlled healthcare. Sonia has over 8 years experience working in the SRH and public health space. A graduate of Michigan State University, Sonia has previously worked for Chemonics International and Society for Family Health and lives in Lusaka, Zambia. So welcome, Sonia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. So the first question that I have for you is, as an organization that offers comprehensive, practical, inclusive, and personalized sexual health and reproductive health information services, have you seen related social media content getting suppressed? And if so, on what platform have you experienced that or seen
Yeah, definitely. I mean, while the advent of digital technology has made information more accessible, it's also created this information dependency on dominant platforms like Facebook and Google. And today Facebook, now Meta, represents one of the largest online sources for people seeking SRH information and resources globally. So in terms of the experience that we've had, I mean, we operate 3 comprehensive websites that are accessible to a global audience that share information, resources, and services around contraceptives and safe abortion. And so we've seen content suppression and censorship across almost all primary social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and even TikTok, which we had initially thought would serve as this alternative to Meta and be a more open space where we could share contraceptive and safe abortion information. In terms of the type of content that we're seeing get suppressed, I mean, on TikTok, this has included any content that is deemed to be of a mature nature, and this typically involves anything that's sex related that will trigger a warning, or your video may just get shadow banned and you have no clue why. And many other sort of social media sites have long placed restrictions on sex education material, sort of wrongly conflating them with sexually exploitative material. And I think internally for big tech, that's been something that they've had a difficult navigating, and so that's where we get negatively impacted. On YouTube, I mean, we've had our YouTube accounts suspended twice now. We've had 2 of our Facebook accounts, a French account and a Portuguese account, suspended. On YouTube, we typically post video tutorials, on how to use the pills, as well as different abortion testimonials. And what's interesting to note that we've witnessed is that, for example, we made a video with Doctors Without Borders on how to safely self-manage a medical abortion, sort of a step-by-step video. And, that got flagged on our account, but somehow on Doctors Without Borders account, nothing happened to them. So it's also difficult understanding if there's some sort of internal ranking that's happening at big tech, or sort of if 2 accounts are posting the exact same material, why does only one get flagged or censored? And we've also noticed this when sharing safe abortion and contraceptive information through influencers. Oftentimes the influencer won't receive any warning. So it also begs the question, like, why is there this discrepancy? One thing that we've also noticed is that we do get flagged for any posts that are considered to be very activist or political in nature, using sort of phrases like, you have the right to know about your safe options, or anything that is promoting freedom of choice or right to knowledge and empowerment. That gets flagged. So we do have to try and keep sort of our external and internal captions very bland and basic in this regard. We also get flagged for showing images of the abortion pills, even if they are illustrated. So, now our content, imagery, and captions have become sort of more abstract, to avoid showcasing any products or any packaging, or sometimes even actual people. One thing that I wanted to note was that, during the height of the COVID pandemic in 2020, Facebook had released new policies in response to the pandemic, and somehow these policies also were more restrictive towards SRH-focused content and pages. And of these new policies, 4, I think, primarily have been responsible for the rejection of 90% of all our ads. And these policies are, social issues, elections, or politics, which saw rejection of all ads depicting personal autonomy and rights-based decision-making, illegal products or services, which automatically rejected any educational content around abortion, emergency contraceptive pills, classifying both as, illegal advertising. Adult products or services was another policy which prevented sort of comprehensive education around sex and pleasure, and then the personal attributes policy, which simply rejected every piece of content that depicted a human in it. We're not sure why. So it was very difficult to determine a pattern in terms of what actually violated community guidelines. And so sometimes you're not sure if it's the external option, the internal, or the image. And in our case, sometimes it could also depend on the country we're targeting with ads. We've seen certain ads allowed to run in certain countries while not being allowed to run in others. So local laws and what agreements big tech have with local countries also comes into play here.
Wow, thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. So you sort of already touched on the second question that I was going to have, so I'll jump to the third. So you've mentioned obviously not being solely US based, but I was wondering, and if it goes more broadly to not just Roe being overturned, but when other countries are facing severe abortion restrictions, if not outright illegality, have you noticed a difference in how social media companies are behaving then towards the information that you are trying to share?
Yeah, I think, that it's an interesting question, because, outside the US, there are, of course, many countries where abortion is very highly restricted, sometimes, complete bans. And because the governments of those countries, while legally it's banned, they are not enforcing it or regulating it as much as we think we might start seeing happening in the US with the states where abortion is banned. So we have had actually success in running ads and disseminating our content in a lot of these restricted countries like Cote d'Ivoire and like Senegal, and generally French West Africa, which is very restricted in general. We've still seen some censorship, but surprisingly, we've managed to run ads there quite successfully in the past. We haven't seen a difference in terms of ads that we've been running to the US. I do want to mention that we are just entering the US market as an organization. And so in terms of our advertising history, it's still fairly new. But what's going to be interesting is, to observe where Facebook, where Meta and Google are going to, what stance they're going to take, because whatever they decide to do, they're going to be making a choice that will have consequences. One of the big areas is sort of this respect to privacy. I mean, because they collect a lot of data, and if people are going to be engaging with content online that is tied to safe abortion, and they live in a state where abortion is regulated, is banned, what does that mean for their right to privacy? Is Facebook or Google, are they going to be compelled to share this data with authorities who may then want to take action to persecute anyone whose history on social media has shown them engaging with specific abortion content, or pregnancy content, and are they going to make certain determinations based on that? So I think big tech could either choose to cooperate with anti-abortion states by shutting down the flow of useful information and sort of handing over incriminating data, or it could shield the flow of health information and help to carve out new privacy protections to prevent that interference with people seeking early pregnancy or abortion information.
Thank you so much for that point. Yeah, as we very well know, the primary risk that people face when looking for self-managed abortion content or abortion content in general is criminalization, that aspect to it. So it is absolutely imperative that people's right to privacy is being protected, and that's something definitely to pay close attention to as we enter into this post-Roe world, but then also as obviously countries all over the world are facing various levels of restriction and access. Yeah, that's such a wonderful point. Thank you so much, Sonia. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to now kick it back over to Erin.
Thank you, and I am very excited to share that that Rachel Lorenzo is here joining us, and we're going to move now to Rachel, who is our next panelist from Indigenous Women Rising. Rachel started in Indigenous Women Rising in 2014 as a campaign to bring attention to the fact that Indigenous women and people who rely on Indian health services for healthcare were being denied access to Plan B, a form of emergency contraception. And this was a huge issue considering the disproportionately high rates of domestic violence and sexual assault on reservations and the limited capability of tribes to prosecute non-Native offenders. And just want to lift up that Indigenous Women Rising is an incredible organization working for Indigenous people and working at the intersections of reclaiming what colonialism and white supremacy have tried to strip from Indigenous women and people. So thank you so much for joining us, Rachel.
Thank you so much for being patient with me.
Oh my gosh. We've had a little tech issues going on in the background for our listeners. And if I didn't know better, I'd say it was a tech conspiracy. But I think in this case, it may have just been a wire cross. Regardless, we've got some really important things to discuss because my understanding that Indigenous Women Rising has been experiencing these issues as well. So let's just start at the top. So we really appreciate and support Indigenous Women Rising and its commitment to honoring Native and Indigenous people's inherent right to equitable and culturally safe health options through accessible health education, resources, and advocacy. So if you could please just share with the listeners, how important of a role do social media platforms play in connecting the organization with people seeking support?
Yeah, so Indigenous Women Rising, we are definitely known for our abortion fund, but we also do midwifery funding, sex education, and political education, community organizing. So social media for us is one of the most important tools that we can have, especially as Indigenous people, where broadband and internet in general is just really hard to come by. A lot of the internet available to Indigenous households who are rural and live on reservations are not like Comcast or CenturyLink or any of like the big ones. It's satellite internet providers, and I grew up with HughesNet, so that was not the most reliable source of connectivity that families have, and considering the economic disparities, Indigenous people especially Indigenous women make about 60 cents to a white man's dollar, and so when we don't really have the best internet, and not only that, when we need cell phones in this day and age, and if we're not able to keep up with our cell phone bills, and we have pay-as-you-go phones or pay-as-you-go plans, our phone numbers might change. The one consistent thing that we might have is our social media. When we started getting known for a project where we made our cultural regalia more breastfeeding friendly back in 2017. That's about when we started getting questions from the community about how to access abortion. And so the DMs, sliding into the DMs has always been one of the most effective ways that our relatives are able to get in contact with us and ask us questions, whether it's very personal health questions about their bodies, about some kind of spiritual or emotional support, funding, anything like that. It's always been the DMs on social media. So it's pretty safe to say that it is one of the best tools that we have. But the suppression of even now the words or the phrases that are used in DMs are some of the most recent concerns that we have when communicating with folks, because we can't. It takes a lot of, which we're happy to invest in, but it takes a lot of time and answering questions about what cyber safety means and the importance of encrypted messaging to really get folks who are seeking our help or our advice or whatever to stay as safe as possible online when they're asking us these questions, because now we're starting to get flags on like Instagram especially. If we're mentioning pills, if we're mentioning blood or periods or anything like that, we'll get a notification that says, "Are you sure you wanted to say that?" Because our team recognizes these as offensive. So there are a lot of new concerns around how our direct messages with our community members are being monitored, especially when for a lot of folks that's really the only way that they're able to communicate with us.
Wow, I am just reeling having heard you say that Instagram is flagging content about periods as offensive when half of the population has capacity to menstruate. And it just shows the depth of misogyny that is also underpinning these supposed, the decisions that are supposed to be about the platform and neutral. It really shows the water that we are swimming in. So I'd love if you want to dig in a little deeper about any additional social media content that you're having problems with suppression, and just highlight the platforms in particular where you are having the greatest difficulties.
Yeah, so here's the order it goes in for us as far as like suppression or not getting our things seen enough is Instagram, and then Facebook, and then Twitter. So Instagram is where we have our most engagement happening. We're able to fundraise there. Businesses in particular who want to fundraise for us are engaging with us through Instagram, and we have about 69,000 followers, which I'm super proud of. And a lot of those folks are our relatives who have been following IWR since like 2013 or 2014. And so the DMs, comments, there is no shortage of racism in our comments, anti-abortion sentiment, white supremacist content that people are commenting on. And because we are an Indigenous-led organization, and a lot of our values around reproductive justice include our traditional values about land and water and natural resources, and how there's no such thing as public lands, because all public lands under the purview of the state and federal governments are stolen Indigenous lands that are very important to our reproductive health, believe it or not. There are these very nefarious views on our access to our own natural resources and how we care for our bodies and our families that are ingrained in these white supremacists. And so when we're talking about like land sovereignty, body sovereignty, and making those connections as Indigenous peoples, those folks have no problem, as we know, voicing their ridiculous views, right? And they can comment with no problem because their comments stay up. However, when we comment, or we're even talking about something that is seemingly innocuous, like periods, we're either being flagged, even if we're spelling abortion like the O's in abortion with zeros, and the T is a plus sign or something, we're trying to figure out how to get around those and still be able to get our message across when we're talking about these issues. So not only are our captions and our comments being flagged in our DMs, but also the imagery. And if you go to our social media, our Instagram in particular, there isn't anything on there like, it's like cartoons or memes and graphics that we have made in-house. And so the fact that those things are being monitored by that our actions as Indigenous people, and now we have AAPI folks on staff, we've contracted undocumented people, and so just seeing how much we get monitored versus like white supremacists who feel super comfortable posting their BS online, that is a huge concern for us. And then on Facebook, we might post some things and it doesn't get nearly as much traction as if it's something original than it would if it was like a meme that has already been shared X amount of times or has already gotten more engagement. And so I think that engagement piece is really important, and I don't hear enough discussion about the engagement piece when it comes to suppressing content on social media. And I say that Twitter is the one that is, not to say that it's not suppressive or oppressive in some way, but at least Twitter has the option where you can see it's a lot easier to have your latest tweets as opposed to what the algorithm thinks you're most interested in, seeing your Twitter, like the content that you see in your Twitter feed. And so we always leave ours on the latest tweets. So that way we can see like what partners are up to and what they're saying. And there seems to be a lot more flexibility versus what we're experiencing on Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. So Rachel, we're a little bit over time, but and I just want to be able to open it up to Q&A for folks. I'm starting to see some questions go in. But before we close this portion of it, ideally, how would social media platforms operate in the future in order to best support your work?
Just leave us the F alone. Like, I really think that that I absolutely believe that there is a place for community guidelines, but I feel like the community guidelines should be guided by accounts and groups of people who have not been able to voice their views, or who are really engaging in these politically charged topics, because that's the reality of it, right? And really be more accountable to the public about how they're making these decisions about what is going against community guidelines and what's not. Because from the outside looking in, as someone who has a very baseline understanding of how tech companies work, I think it's a lot easier for them to operate in darkness. I don't necessarily think a legislative fix is going to do it, because frankly, I don't have very much faith in government. Look at net neutrality, for instance. So I think that revisiting how they carry out the community guidelines and who they are applied to, we need to have an honest conversation about who that applies to and who it doesn't.
Thank you so much. And I'm so glad you're with us today, Rachel. So if anyone has questions for Rachel, just put questions in the questions tab and we'll get to as many as possible at the end. Some brief housekeeping. We absolutely want everyone to plug into Reproaction campaigns. We host these Act and Learn webinars every single month, and they are free and open to the public. And the way that you will never miss an invitation, because we want to invite you, is to sign up for email alerts at reproaction.org. So if you're not on our email list, please get on our email list. That way you can not only get invitations to future webinars, you'll get a recording of this webinar. I want to share that we will absolutely be sharing a recording of this webinar when it is available within the next few days. So watch your inbox for that. But also to get alerts where you can sign on to our petitions to Facebook, get notified about local actions in your community. So email is really where it's at with us. You're also encouraged to follow us on social media. We have a great presence there when the companies aren't suppressing us. So it's Reproaction on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then please save the date. Our next webinar will be on Wednesday, August 9th, and it'll be at noon Eastern again, and we'll be examining the history of abortion methods. So with that, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. So first, yes, I answered, we will be sharing a recording, and just want to note that the person who commented said they're so grateful for being able to hear from all these amazing leaders, as are we. So one question that came up, and it's interesting, it came as both a question and a comment. So one person asked, have you seen any similar censorship on TikTok? And then another person actually wrote in and said they create abortion content on TikTok, and they've seen how content creators notice the word abortion is shadow banned, especially when talking about pills. Are there any of our panelists who'd like to dig in a little more about TikTok?
I can, hi, I can just say with women on web, I've seen the word abortion as well, content that uses the word abortion being shadow banned. And with Plancy pills, I have tried to even run some ads, and they have never gone through. And I always get a message that says, policy violation, your ad doesn't comply with the policies. And I have actually tried to appeal this, and they would just tell me, oh, this is like they wouldn't, Facebook says illegal substances. That's not exactly what they say, but it's something like, you know, we don't advertise substances or something like this. And then they just stop the conversation. So I have never been actually able to run an ad on TikTok.
Thank you for that. Would any of our other panelists like to comment on TikTok?
This is Rachel. On my personal TikTok, talking about abortion, one of the things that I noticed helped get my video like stay on without getting pulled, because I did get like a warning, was like adding different elements to it, like common music. You know, you can click the, you know, what other videos the music has been applied to. And so just figuring out, sorry, I just got a text. Yeah, just figuring out how to add different elements into it, and not spelling it out exactly is really the only way I was personally able to get around that.
It's so interesting. I'm just as a moderator, not sure if a person wants to be disclosed or not on who they are, but I want to share really interesting comment from someone who came in earlier about TikTok and said that they've been able to run TikTok abortion ads, but that the person also recommends going through individual content creators instead of organizational accounts. So presumably that seems to back up exactly some of the experience that you've also been having, Rachel. And I want to then go to this question. This question asks, are you connected to groups that have been having conversations with these platforms over the years regarding other areas of suppression regarding human rights, or investors in these companies who have been allied with these groups? And there was also another, just to this person also commented that there's a history of shareholder proposals on these issues, which is great, and also really a great way for us, as part of the reason why we hold these webinars, is to bring advocates together to strategize and share information and build knowledge. And there are so many different sectors where we could be more effective, right, in getting it through. So it's not just about the companies themselves and working with the companies themselves, but also because they are public-facing companies, this is something that is certainly subject to shareholder activism. So that's awesome. And I just want to share at the outset, as an answer to this question, like, yes, I know many of the groups on the line and many others have had direct conversations with the social media platforms, including sometimes ones where we're held outside their doors with petitions. But also want to highlight that recently at RightsCon, Women on Web, Women for Digital, and Reproaction co-sponsored a closed discussion that included folks from a variety of areas in the abortion sector, as well as a UN Special Rapporteur. And there are a number of different, I also want to acknowledge there are a number of different spaces, cross movements, that are having these discussions. And we're really excited by things like the Center for Countering Digital Hate and what they're collaborating, the collaborations they bring. Ultraviolet does an amazing collaborative space on women's issues. And I also just want to shout out that Media Matters also does a number of cross-movement pieces. Are there anything else that panelists would like to lift up here? Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to go to the next one. And I think on this one, I'm going to lean into Jessica, Reproaction's Digital Outreach and Opposition Research Director, to start this question. Have you seen any instances of anti-abortion people mass reporting posts on social media as a means of having these posts taken down or attempting to?
That's a great question. I suspect that has happened to us and might have been the case for our self-managed abortion with pills post that got taken down in September. But other than that, I haven't seen a direct attack against us. I have noticed and been very frustrated, as I touched on earlier, that the hashtags mifepristone and misoprostol had been suppressed on and off for the past several months, going back to 2021 at least. And yet the unproven, unethical anti-abortion abortion pill reversal method, which anyone who uses that as part of an experiment, which they might not know about, that hashtag on Instagram has never been suppressed. So there is this inconsistency that I feel very frustrated with when we share factual information on reproductive health care and healthcare broadly that gets flagged, and yet antis can seemingly on the same platforms push their unproven anti-abortion rhetoric and not face the same type of consequences. But I'll kick it to the panelists too if they want to expand upon that.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think we've had a very similar experience. We know in Latin America, especially when we start to receive a lot of negative comments on a particular post that's abortion related, sometimes very soon after we do see that post has been taken down or flagged, and we are suspecting that it's because anti-choices are sort of banding together and reporting it, and they do appear to be very organized in that manner. I'm not sure if it's happening the other way around. I mean, of course, if we do see misinformation, we do try to report it, but I don't know if us on the pro-choice side are being as organized to report misinformation. But again, yeah, it doesn't happen with all posts. Sometimes the post is fine and it stays up, and then other times it gets taken down, and we see that correlation with the negative comments.
So we are just about at time. We have many more questions that are here. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to them all, but I really want to thank our panelists, starting with Martha, then Sonia, then Rachel, and of course, Jessica Ensley, who put this webinar together, recruited the panelists, and just did spectacular work to bring us all together today. We will be in touch with everyone with a recording of this webinar. Please sign up for alerts so that you can stay in touch and we can continue to work together on these topics. And we will fight for accurate information online, and we will make it happen. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.